All right, another topic I see coming up on a regular basis from newer reloaders is they're crushing primers and bending decapping pins, and this is due mostly to crimp primers, and it's primarily in 223 and 5.56 9 millimeter. Uh, what I've got here is a handful of 223 and 5.56 cases, just to show some crimps. Now these are all picked up off the ground at the range. I didn't shoot these. As you can see over here, these are federal, and there's a little ring around there where it's kind of hard to see. Over here it's a little more obvious. This is the LC. This is Lake City. This is military brass, but you can see right in there. It comes in, and it's called a ring crimp, but it steps it in and holds the primer in place. This is meant to keep the primer from backing out during automatic fire from like a machine gun or something. But it's kind of a pain for reloaders because you gotta get that primer out of there, which generally for me it's not too big of an issue. I mean, you can feel some resistance when you're depriming a case like that, but it's not too bad. The main issue is if you miss one of these crimped primer pockets and you try to seat a new primer, it's going to be hard, or you're going to crush your primer. So this is just an example here, but I've got some 9 millimeter cases I'll show in a second. But on these head stamps, if you look at stuff like this little circle with a cross in it, this is the NATO stamp, and that's on all military brass. And L City is Lake City. That's some of the best brass you can get for reloading that you're going to find readily available. Precision shooters, a lot of those guys will buy like Lapua brass. It's kind of costly. I don't do a lot of precision myself, but yeah, if you see this, that's the NATO stamp, and then over here this is federal. Now I will say I've got these two up here. You got Lake City, which is considered one of the best for reloading, and federal. Well, I've not had much trouble with it myself. Their 223 brasses, it don't really have the best reputation. It's known as just okay. Maybe three to five reloads on a case is what I'm reading online. People are getting, and it'll split, or they're having issues with the primer pockets and things like that. And while I've not noted things like that on my own, I'm just passing along. I'm reading it from a lot of sources, and this Lake City is pretty sought after at some of the better brass you'll be able to pick up. Now the 5.56, which is what Lake City is, this brass is a little bit thicker, so that could account for case life. All right, these 9 millimeter cases here that I've got for you to look at. These are, I picked all these up. Now these still have, they're deprimed obviously, but these still have the crimp in place in the primer pockets. Now these are all, that ring crimp. Now over here's another type of crimp. It's these three little points right here. Now sometimes they'll call that a staking a primer. And generally it's three little notches, here, here, and up here. You can see they got a little green on them. And a lot of these primers, you see some red right there. They'll have some kind of a sealant on there around the primer to keep moisture out. Now the ones over here, I'll try to zoom in a little bit better, but these right here, you can see that little ridge has been removed. Now those, what I did is I cut the primer crimp out of those. I'm sure where you can see that it's slightly rounded. Now, there's two ways of removing a crimp from a primer pocket. One is cutting it out with a reamer, or the other is swaging it. Now, I don't have a swaging tool. A lot of people swear by it, and I may eventually get one myself, but I've had luck with just cutting them out. Now, if you cut too deep, you know, you can end up making your primer pocket loose, you know, around the top here. It'll be unsupported if you cut it too deep. And you can see over here where the little lip right there is still in place. If I'd have thought about it, I would have kept some of these while they were still primed. But these have been de-primed and already tumbled, so they're clean. One way I'll cut these crimps out of the primer pockets is on a Lyman case prep station. It's a powered tool, so take this. Let me get it to focus here. You see that crimp? Just touch it on every second, you can see some of the brass come off. Here you can see it's rounded. I didn't take off too much. You just want to take off just a little bit. You just want to cut that crimp out. You see, you just lightly bevel the edge right there at the mouth of the primer pocket. Do just a couple here. You can feel it, it'll bite just a little bit. You'll feel it just bite into the crimp. And it goes away, you know, pretty quick, usually within about half a second, if even that. Here's that step piece. See, just a little resistance. You see just a little bit of the green left, but it cut those little steps out. All right, here's 3 of the ones I just cleaned up the primer pockets on. You can look and see where it's just shiny right there at the edge. It's just enough to cut that crimp out, but it's not going to open up the mouth of your primer pocket enough to, you know, leave the back of your primer unsupported or anything. Now, some people, they'll be like, you know, I'm not going to waste time, you know, cutting the crimp out of 9mm brass. You know, it's so plentiful. Well, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I'll go to the range and I'll pick up 1,000 pieces on the day I shoot, and I might find 20, maybe 25 will be military pieces of brass like this. And I'll fill up a bag, and I get about 100 of them. I'll sit here, and in about 20 minutes or so, I've done all of them. It's just extra brass to load up and shoot. There's nothing wrong with it. And there's also those who say that it's not good to remove any material, you know, by actually cutting out the crimps as opposed to swaging it. Swaging just moves the metal around it. You know, you get a piece that goes in there and it just forces the material back out and opens the pocket up a little bit to remove the crimp. But I think you can overdo it when you're cutting it out, but if you're careful and just take off just the minimum, you just want to get the crimp out, and that's all. And it works fine for me. I've shot thousands of rounds that I've done this to, and I've never had any issues with you know, primers or anything after I fired them.